Joining me on the line is the opposition spokesman for families, Kevin Andrews. Mr Andrews, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tom.
Now, is there a debate going on in the coalition ranks as to whether to keep or get rid of the baby bonus?
No, we decided that we would oppose these measures, but can I go back to the origin of the baby bonus? In your introductory comments, you talked about it as a welfare measure. This wasn't a welfare measure. This was a measure that Peter Costello put in place after the intergenerational reports, which said that if we wanted to maintain our economic growth in Australia, we had to look at three things: population, productivity and participation. Population's important because every historical study shows that about a quarter to one-third of our economic growth in Australia and elsewhere is due simply to population growth. In 2001, the birth rate had fallen to 1.7. As a result of the baby bonus, we actually raised the birth rate again to just over 1.9, which is getting close to the replacement level that you need to maintain historically in order to maintain economic growth.
Yes, but I mean, if we want to have more people in Australia, I mean, we've got untold numbers of immigrants who'd happily bust down our door if we opened it for them. I mean, there's a very easy way if we want to increase the population, and that's just, well, to be honest, let in the boats.
Immigration doesn't work, Tom, because the average age of immigrants is the average age of the population, and that means that the immigrants age along with the rest of us. So let me just look at the future. Back in 2004, when I was the employment minister, we did a study of the growth of the workforce, and that showed that each year the Australian workforce was growing by about 175,000 people. That study projected that because of the ageing of the population, which is caused in part by lower fertility rates, the workforce from 2020 to 2030 would grow by just 12,000 people. Now, that would be a disaster for Australia, and immigration won't fix that problem of ageing.
Well, do you think the baby bonus has succeeded in terms of increasing fertility per couple?
Yes, it did, and leading demographers like Peter MacDonald at the Australian National University said that this was one of the reasons why we got the fertility rate up from 1.7 to 1.9. If you look at a country like, say, Singapore, where it's dropped to 1.2, I think, they've found that despite every effort they've made, it's virtually impossible again if you get too low to drive your fertility rate up again, and then that has a long-term consequence for the economic growth of the nation.
Isn't the problem, though, that with the cost of living being what it is, that the decision to have, say, 3 kids rather than 2 for many families is a very tough financial decision? If that's the case, I mean, $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever the number ends up being, that's really not going to make that much difference, is it?
Well, I'll tell you what, when I was having kids, Tom, an extra $5,000 was certainly something which I would very much have appreciated at that time. Look, I think it does make a difference, and there are studies that show that it can particularly make a difference for third and subsequent children, and it's the families that have 3 or 4 children are the ones that actually have the major impact in terms of increasing the fertility rate.
Okay, so finally, I accept your arguments. I don't agree with all of them, but if that's the case, if you're elected to government at the upcoming federal election in mid-September, would you get rid of the means test on the baby bonus and just make it $5,000 for every child, irrespective of household income?
I can't answer that for this reason, Tom. We don't know what's going to be in the next budget, let alone what's in the statement that the Treasury releases during the election campaign. We do know that we're facing a $300 billion Commonwealth debt, and we're facing, 5 or 6 huge budget deficits in a row. So until we know the state of the books, which most economists are saying will be even worse than what the government is pretending, then we have difficulty in making decisions. We've got to do a lot of things, one of which is, what we're talking about, try and maintain the fertility rate for long-term economic growth, but we've also got to get the Commonwealth books back in the black, and that's going to be a big job.
Indeed. Kevin Andrews, Opposition Spokesman for Families, thank you for joining us.